I would like to introduce our next speaker. It is Dr. Thomas Uhlig, our President, Global Supply Chain. Thomas is responsible for global purchasing, global logistics. He operates those bespoke warehouses, and he will now talk about our dual sourcing strategy, global standards that we pursue, and of course, looking into supply chain resilience. So, Thomas, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Konrad. Hello, everybody. And my colleagues already elaborated a little bit. We are in a global world. We are speaking about local for local. We are speaking about near sourcing. Still, the world is global. And we have seen in the past years that our supply chains have to cope with many disruptions. And that means the term or the concept of supply chain resilience becomes more and more important. And this is what I will drive you through, how we try to take care for our customers, for the delivery service, with all those disruptions globally in order to bring the goods on time and in quality to our customers. So what I will show you is what do we understand under supply chain resilience. I will touch a little bit on risk management. If risks rise, how do we mitigate those risks? And then there's certainly one key thing, and that's near sourcing, which I would say, especially since 2020, since the COVID crisis became apparent. And we use it also as a competitive advantage here at Trelleborg before finishing with a very short summary. So we all have seen that in the past 25 years or so, we had to cope, or the world was affected with many disruptions. And we can start in the year 2001. We all still know, unfortunately, 9/11 attacks, but we go through wars, attacks. We had financial crises in 2008. We have the tariffs now in 2025. But we also go through natural disasters, which we had transportation bottlenecks. If we speak about the Panama Canal, the Red Sea crisis, the Suez Canal. And there are many things which we only can plan to a certain extent. And this is what it is, that we are exposed to an increasing number of those disruptive events globally. And there is the concept of supply chain resilience, which we elaborate here heavily in order to cope with those events. So what is supply chain resilience here at Trelleborg? In fact, it is to enable to be ready to respond and to recover from those, I call it, interruptions or disasters. And it is to keep the business in a continued way. And it means minimize the disruptions, maintain the operations during the crisis. And in the end, the most important thing is to serve you, our customers, with the demands in those challenging times and to satisfy you. And for sure, on the other side, it is also about keeping and protecting the market share for us here at Trelleborg by adapting to those changes and ensuring a competitive advantage towards our competitors here. So if we now look into our supply chain, one key thing is we are still, I have to say, and we will stay in a global world, even if we touch a lot about local for local, but there are transportation routes. There are suppliers or plants in different regions of the world, and that will certainly stay to a certain extent. The key thing is to have an end-to-end visibility across your entire supply chain. And at Trelleborg, what we do here is we have the data to have a transparency. We think global, but we act local. And I think this is a very important thing. We have a global reach, as Konrad explained already, but we have a local presence in Europe, for example, here with all the factories Martin has explained. And we have some 500 plus third-party suppliers on top. But it is really key to keep this network together, to know where's our base polymer coming from, where's our mixing facility, then Trelleborg, and then where are you? Where are the customers sitting in this world? And we have here in Stuttgart a central logistics center. And if I speak about a logistics center, it's not only logistics, it's not only packaging, it is services, it's value-add services what we do here. And on top of that, we manage our material flows from a purchasing perspective, transportation perspective, planning. We manage the quality from here. And this is all done in a transparent and in a global way. And we have the same setup in the Americas to complete this in Fort Wayne. And we have some centers in Asia Pacific without going in detail into here. But what is worthwhile to mention, even if those are our global logistics centers, we still have local satellites. And I go into Bulgaria here for Europe. I go into Turkey. For the aerospace business, I go into the UK, Burnwood, or in Passy in France very soon, where we have our satellites, because we all know a global logistics center is fine, but in some cases we need to be closer to the customers with the services and with those kind of satellites, and we'll touch on that a bit later. And just to give you a very quick flavor of what we have done those days, we are just transferring our logistics into a new logistics center in Gärtlingen, which is very close to Stuttgart here. We are operational there. We have the newest technologies with AutoStore system, with SAP EWM. We have robots. We have automated sorting machine. So it's not only logistics what we are doing for you. It is offering of far more of services, value-add services. We can do coatings. We can do seal glides. We can do a lot of different things from here. And on top of that, we organize our material flows in Europe and beyond that globally also. But coming back to resilience and to risk management, and I personally think since 2008 or between 2008 and 2020, even when having had some issues in this world in terms of disruptions, the financial crisis in 2008 was the last big one. And then we had the COVID crisis in 2019, 2020. But since then, really, those disruptions, they came more and more frequent. And this is why we have rethought our entire risk management at Trelleborg. And that does not only mean the supply chain. It means material shortages, labor shortages. It means protection of our IP or intellectual property, but it also means cyber risk and others. And having contingency plans for each single site in the world. And if I go into supply chain here, then we focus on some key areas. And I've spoken on the end-to-end visibility, which you see on the upper left. For that, data quality and data availability is key. If you don't have the data and if you want to operate a global supply chain, you cannot act in crises. So you need to have this data and also a footprint or a track on your supply base. And that means really, where do your 500 plus third-party suppliers sit? How are the material flows going through this world? And we'll also come to that in a minute. Why is that important? And I've touched on logistics a little bit, on transportation, which you see on the bottom right. But what is also very important, what will you do in a crisis? Because it happens, it might happen, and you can prepare it to a big extent. But there might be some things where you face raw material or labor shortages, for examples, and you need to prioritize. So we have a very stringent G, gold customer, and then ABC customer classification in order to prioritize. Material flexibility or compound flexibility, having flexible compounds to move from one to the other plant or from one to the other supplier is absolutely key. Having a track, where do we have which tools, where do we have which machines and equipment in the world, and the capacities in our productions. So to know where do we have spare free capacity to move parts or to move volume in. And then I spoke about planning and inventory, and we'll also touch on that. But it is really to monitor the risks, to mitigate with all the things which I have just shown to you in order to keep a level of reliability, what you, our customers, expect from us. So going into some key functions, because if we speak about supply chain, it's not logistics only. Konrad elaborated it already. It's quality. It is purchasing. It's planning. It's procurement. It's master data. So there's far more behind it. And I would say that purchasing and logistics are two key functions to really cope with today's complex material flows in this world. And I just, even if I repeat a little bit, key risks today, global risks. We spoke about geopolitical tensions. It can be wars, it can be regional conflicts, it can be tariffs, supply chain disruptions, which can be natural disasters. We spoke about port congestions in the Americas, in Los Angeles, for example. We speak about the pandemic. Economic volatility and uncertainties that can certainly be the inflation which we cope or changes in currencies. Commodity and energy price shocks. We know about that, increasing price for oil, for example. Environmental constraints, which is climate related event. And last but not least, what happened more and more, and many of the companies have to cope with that, cyber attacks and technological issues or risks. So what are we doing here? And it should just give you a flavor on what we work on without going into all of the details. But we have a very stringent supplier diversification. And I know it's easy to say multiple sourcing, but where we can do it, we do it. And where we don't have it, we work with our customers and with our plants very heavily to diversify, to have not only one source and one country, but several sources and especially several countries also. Because if we have a war somewhere, then we can escape and go elsewhere. Sustainability goes into also relationship with suppliers. Why? It's not only environment for us, carbon footprint and so on. It is to have long-term relationships with our suppliers. And this is why I hate the word suppliers. In fact, we should say it's supply partners. We consider our suppliers as partners. We have long-term relationships, and we look into mitigation plans together with them. So in order to be ready if something happens. Digitalization, you need analytics. Without analytics, without business intelligence, you cannot have the transparency. And procurement tools, you need to have a clear overview, for example, on your services, service levels, but also spend analysis. Resilient contracting, which also includes force majeure, for example, or service levels with our partners. Inventory, we have those logistics centers also for a reason to buffer inventory, to have safety stock for you ready, for key parts in order not to really provoke a line stop. And then certainly redundant systems and clear incident or contingency plans if something is not going right. So I want to summarize on this one. Absolutely, purchasing and logistics in today's world, in our opinion, are key to mitigate the supply risks. And then you have another function which is as important, and that's transportation, which is at Trelleborg here under the head of logistics. But it is as important because most of all those disruptions have transportation consequences, almost all. So I repeat probably some of the challenges here, but it's very important how you act on them. So we have again the disruptions from geopolitical events, wars, trade conflicts. We have port congestions. That means dependence on single modes. If you have a port congestion, what we had in Los Angeles last year, then you need to reroute your deliveries. You need to come into Chicago. That's an example on the Americas now. Or you need to go via the South of Americas and you need to go via truck. Capacity shortages and rising transportation costs. Labor shortage is probably one of the most important issues which we have today. We need to cope with it. And we will have a lack here in Europe on truck drivers. And that is absolutely something which we need to cope or consider. And then it's the transparency and traceability. So what are we doing? We diversify. We have modular concepts here. It's not only sea, it's sea, air freight, it's land. It is everything where we look into, and we have a very good cooperation and long-term partnerships with our partners such as DHL, UPS, Daxer here in Europe for freight, DSV for all the sea freight from Asia into here. So there are those corporations, and it is key if a crisis happens that we have the contact partners, that we have a long-term relationship, that this partner is going really beyond what is normal for us or together with us. And then to jump to real-time monitoring, tracking and tracing is absolutely important to have the right systems here. So transportation, absolute high priority for Trelleborg. And I want to jump to one topic, not to forget that. It's local for local. It's near sourcing. We see it as a competitive advantage. Martin has explained what we can do in Europe here. The same is valid for the other regions of the world. But why is it so important? It is important because we have a stronger supply chain resilience. And that means we minimize the dependency on volatile regions, on distant regions. And that means in the end, we can respond very quickly to shocks. Faster time to market. Our production cycles become shorter. And it's also shorter delivery times to you, to the customers. Lower transportation costs, where in the end everybody benefits. Also the environment, because of the carbon footprint. And we navigate around the tariff issue, the tariff landscape. And we also, we are also aware that in Europe, with export control issues, we also need to navigate around that. But certainly in a local for local environment, those are far less. And it's an improved quality and control. And that means not the product quality, which I'm convinced has to be a given, and it is a given from Trelleborg. But it is really the time for resolution if we face issues. And it is continuous improvement, being fast here. Customer-centric manufacturing is very important to be customized here. So for us, this is not an operational task or tactics. It's really a strategic imperative here at Trelleborg to work and to continue local for local and near sourcing. To summarize what I have said, it is all about preparing for future challenges, to anticipate disruptions, to monitor them, to identify as much as we can, to be proactive, to address the impact and develop proactive strategies. Supply chain resilience, again, is a key concept here at Trelleborg. And local for local, it's to create customer value. And it's all about value for you, for the customer in geographical proximity. And having said that, I'm fully aware that we will continue in a global world, and we have to. It is fine-tuning where we are today. And it is the need to build up more local sources probably than what we have today. We at Trelleborg, we're prepared for this. But this is also a partnership with you, with our customers, because we need to revalidate. We might have customer approvals ready, and that might also cost tooling or other investments. So it's a challenge for Trelleborg and for you, for our customers, to go through this period and to make the best out of it and to prepare for all disruptions which will come up.
Excellent. Thank you, Thomas. A power force-fit ride through some of the challenges that are ahead of us. And we see a lot of customers are asking questions. I really would like to highlight some of the messages along the line of the customer proximity, that we are flexible. And then really the call for action is we want to be your partner along your journey. And so come and see us. We are up to the C-suite that we're presenting here today, ready to work with you in a dialogue. Now, this seemingly is a colleague of yours in a customer organization. Do you have examples of key performance indicators, KPIs, how you assess supply chain resilience?
Yeah, it's a good question to answer to this colleague somewhere out in Europe here. Certainly, we can have so-called supplier risk scores. And supplier risk scores, I would not develop completely new things here. Supplier risk scores is nothing else than a supply performance evaluation, what we have here. And that really means to take more than only performance into the game, but also what's the financial health of a supplier? Where is the supplier coming from? From which region? Is it a risky region or not? So really to measure our supply base. And it is perhaps also on-time delivery. On-time delivery during those times, how is your on-time delivery towards your customer changing? And then you might also have one thing which is called supplier or single sourcing index. And that means on how many products or items do we depend on one supplier. And clear risk is, we have said, is multiple sourcing, multiple country. So we also should take this into consideration.
Excellent. How are we navigating tariffs between China, the US, Europe, given that seemingly we are producing all around the world, with the EU being definitely sort of the biggest footprint? We saw it by the number of manufacturing sites. How are we navigating through this pretty intransparent jungle, I may say?
Yeah. I mean, here again, our global footprint is a big advantage. We know exactly what is coming from where. And while I'm standing here for today as the director for Europe, we have the organization also in Americas. So we know exactly what do we buy in Asia and being delivered into Europe, and from the America being delivered into Europe. So meaning we know the volumes, we know the parts, we know the customers, we know our plants or suppliers which are behind this. So what we do is we have a task force here amongst the logistics or supply chain directors in this world, which is led by myself. And we have a SharePoint here with actions. And that means really It's a weekly task force where we update the newest impact. And then we can park goods, for example, in the Americas, in our logistics center. Wait, what are we doing with the customer? Should we ship immediately? Should we risk a tariff? Do we wait 1 or 2 weeks? And those are the things which we discuss here. We also, I give you examples, while you try to find the best flow through this world, for example, from Asia into Mexico, you might go via the Americas. You shortcut now, going directly into Brazil or into Mexico. So you change the transportation routes. And this can only be done if you have a small team, if you have full transparency, and you stick together. So we manage this with very conventional, with a global SharePoint, where we have our meetings, we have actions behind, and we execute.
Yeah, and if I may say, we can respond to customer individual challenges by rerouting products, etc. So this is definitely something where we would extend our invitation to say, come and see us and see how can we help you solving your challenges with global risks that you are seeing. A last question that I find really interesting that I picked out of here, and that's one related to data technology and artificial intelligence. How do you think, when you mentioned the transparency, how do you think good data and artificial intelligence can help us further advancing those type of solutions for our customers?
Yeah, good question. Thanks. I mean, everybody speaks about artificial intelligence, and let's name it. It is important, but you need good data. And I have mentioned it already. Without having good data, full data, data quality, you can't work with artificial intelligence. So I think we have in many areas very good data, and we are preparing the journey on artificial intelligence. And if you ask me, how can we use it here? Certainly for weather conditions, for example. Those are things which artificial intelligence can do far better than we do. What if analysis or scenarios? Here we will certainly use it. And then you have on the market very good supply chain mapping tools. And we're also looking into one, even if we have a transparent and a global supply chain, to map your flows, because those supply chains become very, very complex. So you have some companies on the market which offer those tools. You can map everything, and on top of that, you have the possibility also to work on sustainability, to measure your carbon footprint, emissions, and all of that.
Excellent. Well, I think this also shows that it is a company of our size, of our footprint, that really can help you, our customers, along this journey where we think we can help offering competitive advantage to you, our customers. Thank you, Thomas. Excellent.
Welcome. Thanks a lot.